can you talk a little bit more in detail what happened with the original Operation Chokepoint? What happened back in 2013? Because I'm not sure people are exactly sure what happened.
So at its essence, the FDIC illegally put pressure on regulated banks to stop doing business with payday lenders, gun shops, and maybe a few other.
Was it sex workers as well?
Yeah, sure. Pick your favorite, loosely associated with vice-type industries. The U.S. back then was still a pretty conservative place, but the manner in which it was done was all informal, which is what made it illegal. And so here's the challenge. The banks in the U.S. are quasi-public-private partnerships. And it's very lucrative to be an executive at a big bank. I mean, look at Jamie Dimon's net worth. So if the government basically controls your charter, as Signature found out this weekend, what the government says to you, even informally, can have devastating consequences if you don't pay attention, right? And so if you whisper into Jamie Dimon's ear and say, look, you should probably stop banking with gun shops. And if they do so after sort of one of the many unfortunate and countless numbers of mass shootings that we have in the U.S., where the political pressure is high and there's a lot of sympathy for such a course of action. Whatever your views are on gun control, it is at the moment constitutionally protected. And but if you're a gun shop owner and Bank of America decides they're not going to, so here's a perfect example. As a fallout of Operation Chokepoint, once people realized that this was a possibility, anti-gun groups have been pressing the payment processors to put a new and unique tag on gun sales, as opposed to like general, let's just say general merchandise. I don't know what it's tagged at today, but they want a special tag on it. And the gun industry has been lobbying against that because once you have that tag, it's very easy with the flick of a switch to suddenly overnight PayPal, Stripe, stop processing payments for anybody involved in the industry. And so there's no question, not just banking, payment processors are a point source of power as well. So with Operation Chokepoint, the FDIC essentially put the word out to the banks that they should stop processing payments for these industries, and many did. And that's what caused the uproar. Much of that was overturned. As I said, they were sued, and the payday lenders effectively won that lawsuit. But over time, they keep coming back for another bite at the apple and another bite at the apple, and that's where poker was really the next big thing after that series of events, and so on and so forth. So poker led to Operation Chokepoint, which led to Operation Chokepoint 2.0. That's the sort of chronology of it. And now we see 2.0, and it's crypto. And okay, like you could say, I'm a no corner, and I've always answered no on that IRS. Do you have any digital currencies on my taxes correctly? And so maybe I just don't worry about it. Hey, as long as I don't do crypto, quote, I'll be fine. But that's not how this goes, right? Pretty soon it'll be, hey, your views on the solutions to climate change, we think that's disinformation. And so we think banking with you represents an unnecessary risk for our franchise. Here's a cashier's check for your account balance, and your account is closed. And you have no recourse. Like, that is totally possible.
Well, look, I can give you 2 examples from the UK. My personal bank, about 2 years ago, I banked with Lloyds. I'd been with them for 21 years, and I got a call from customer services asking me to run through some of my transactions. And I said to them, "Do I have to?" And they said no. I said, "Well, I'm not going to. I'm a grown up. I don't know who you are. Why am I talking to some random person in a call center about what I spend my money on? This is my money. If I've done anything illegal, then you have due process." And I received a letter, and my accounts were closed down 2 weeks later. And then separately, I'd moved my business account to a company called Wise. And Wise were very specific in their terms and conditions, saying that you cannot send your money to exchanges, to crypto exchanges, to buy and sell crypto. That's what it said. I had an invoice paid because we're a podcast where one of our sponsors is a crypto company. It's Gemini. So I had I received a payment from them. I'd received lots of payments, by the way, over the years for sponsorships. But when this one came in, they questioned it. And I said, it's a sponsor for my podcast. It's a Bitcoin podcast, and they're a crypto company. And even though there was nothing in their terms and conditions, They immediately froze my bank account, froze access to my funds. I couldn't, there was no way I could have made payroll that week. I mean, I did eventually through personal money. I had to open up a new bank account, which took time, and transfer the funds across. And but there was no reasons given on either of them. It's, we no longer want you as a customer. In both scenarios, where all I'd done is ask for some privacy on a personal level, and they didn't like the company I was doing business with.
Yeah. So we, in the piece, Pandora's President, we said, if your business has crypto in its name or you're considered a high-profile individual associated with the industry, prepare for possible ejection from the traditional banking system, and prepare for that. And it's scary because, again, it's not actually your money, and there's no way to operate with outside of the banking system. Like it's the equivalent of telling people to build their own Twitter because they don't like the political nature of the censorship that happened, before and after the last election. Well, good luck with that if the servers aren't going to allow you to do it, or if the app stores aren't going to list your app. Like we live in a world where we need ultimately a new bill of financial freedom, like a new bill of financial rights. Like it should be much, much harder for a bank to close an account on somebody. Look, they have a legitimate right in many ways to ask about transactions. We've had those calls. We have a client from overseas, and when they pay our retainer, more often than not is probably too strong, but occasionally we get a call from a compliance officer at the bank asking for more details, and can we see a copy of your contract, and is this person a real thing? Because they're not actually worried about us. They're worried about being accused by their regulators of not doing enough. It's kind of like, I don't know if this is the way it is in the UK, but in the US, it's become more and more, this is a different example, but I think it's a similar incrementalism. If you go buy a bottle of wine in the US today, and they have to check your ID, right? They have to make sure that you're over the legal drinking age, which in my state is 21. Well, I can tell you that at the grocery store, there's a little button on the computer where the person, because it's all self-checkout now, of course, too, because, they've gotten rid of all of those jobs. It used to be about 2 years ago that the button was, I acknowledge this person is over 30. And they didn't even have to look at your ID. Like it was incumbent upon the person looking at you saying, this person's not under the age of 21. Last year, that button got changed to, I acknowledge this person is under the age of 40. And now that button has been elevated to, I acknowledge that this person is under the age of 50. And every time I buy a bottle of wine, which is, more often than not when I'm at the grocery store, they literally take my license and scan it in now. Right? And so it used to be you just showed your license and they looked at you and they knew that, you weren't any issue. But now it's become, and why does a grocery store do that? They're not actually doubting that I'm over 21. They're deathly afraid of losing their liquor license.
Of course.
On a technicality.
We don't have with the licensing laws, we don't have the same here. It's do they, and it's different places. Do they look over 21 or 25? And that's a buffer. And they don't get in particular big trouble when they make mistakes. I mean, it happens, but it's not like the US where I still get asked for ID to buy alcohol. But what we do have a very similar thing in the banking sector. And what it is that the government has outsourced financial surveillance to the banks.
Yes, 100%. And by the way, it's a nuisance for me, and because I'm sensitive to such things, I always get mildly annoyed when it happens, but I give the person my driver's license and I buy my bottle of wine because I have guests coming over and I don't want to go through the pain of going to a store that doesn't yet do that, right? And so this is the perfect example of incrementalism and accepting an ever-encroaching surveillance state. And when you apply that very simple but powerful analogy, like it literally, I saw it with my own eyes. In the past 18 months, it's gone from 30 to 40 to 50. And it's soon, they'll just wipe that out and say, you must scan your driver's license to buy alcohol. That's what's coming. Like that's the, and then after that, it's, don't you think you've purchased enough alcohol, Mr. Doomberg? Like it's coming. And back to central bank digital currencies and all of these things converging on the eye of Sauron, as Ben Hunt correctly describes the intent of the U.S. Treasury.
Well, it's this kind of surveillance singularity that's coming, which freaks me out as somebody who thinks they live in a fairly free society, but and tries not to be a conspiracy theorist, but at the same time is sympathetic to conspiracies because so many of them have come true.
Well, you know the origin of that phrase, of course, right? It was concocted by the CIA after Kennedy's assassination
I didn't know that.
yeah, it never existed in the vernacular before then, and it was created to take credibility away from those who were challenging the official narrative of President Kennedy's assassination. And so that's a rather, I find it so intellectually lazy when people are quick to dismiss interpretation of events as a, quote, conspiracy theory. That's always a flag for me, that the person dismissing the hypothesis as a conspiracy theory has done very little intellectual work on the subject.